Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something very specific today.
Very specific.
We're looking at a set of circumstances, a stack of reports, and really a shift in legal reality that is happening right now in South Asia. And I want to be very clear right from the jump about where this information is coming from.
Yeah, that's important. This isn't just a random collection of articles we found online. This is a comprehensive research presentation.
Yeah.
It was put together by Sarwech Odho.
Exactly, Sarwech Odho. And we are broadcasting this discussion specifically for the listeners of Radio Voice in London. And that platform is really important to the context here. I was looking at their mission statement. It's right at the top of our source pile. And they aim to be the Mazluman ki awas.
The voice of voiceless.
The voice of the voiceless. And they operate on this idea that, when the mainstream cameras turn off or when they're maybe forced to look away, someone has to keep the record.
And the record we're looking at today, the one compiled by Sarwech Odho, using footage from Voice of Sindh News, siasat.pk, and these extensive text summaries, it's heavy. I mean, there's no other word for it.
It really is.
It's documenting a systemic shift. We aren't just talking about, bad things happening in the shadows. We are talking about the rules changing to make those bad things legal.
That's the hook that really grabbed me when I was reading through this. We often talk about human rights violations, abductions, torture, silencing dissent as things that happen, like you said, in the shadows.
Right. The rogue element theory.
The rogue element, the dark alley, the unmarked car. But the central thesis of this research is that the shadows are being legislated. The unseen is being codified into law.
That's the paradox of law we need to explore today. I mean, what happens when a disappearance stops being a crime and starts being, a clause in a provincial rule book?
It's terrifying.
We're seeing the creation of a legal framework that seems designed to justify detention without trial, and it's specifically targeting political dissenters, activists, and maybe most disturbingly, the lawyers who defend them.
Okay, so we have a lot of ground to cover. I think we should give you a roadmap of where we're going. We're going to start in Balochistan. There's a new set of rules there called the Prevention Rules 2025. We'll unpack that. Then we're going to move to the capital, to Islamabad, to break down the really shocking arrest of a high-profile human rights lawyer, Imaan Mazari.
And from there, we'll look at this phenomenon of broken men whistleblowers like Liaquat Chatha who disappear and then come back.
Oh.
Shattered.
And finally, we'll look at the war on information itself, the crackdown on the journalists and producers trying to tell these stories.
It's a full-spectrum analysis, really, from the provinces to the capital, from the courts to the media.
Okay, so let's start with Folder 1, Balochistan. The headline in the research provided by Sarwech Odho is all about the Balochistan Prevention Rules 2025. Now, prevention rules sounds incredibly boring. It sounds, I don't know, like something about fire safety or maybe health codes.
It's classic bureaucratic camouflage, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Balochistan cabinet approved these rules recently, and they did it alongside something called the Center of Excellence in Countering Violent Extremism.
This, again, sounds very academic, very structured.
Exactly. It sounds productive.
Yeah.
But these Prevention Rules 2025 are the operational arm of this new initiative. And the headline statistic, the number that just jumps off the page, is 90 days.
90 days? Let's just pause on that for a second. That is 3 months.
3 months, a quarter of a year.
And what can happen in those 90 days?
Under these new rules, security forces can detain any individual for up to 90 days. But here's the critical part, the part you have to focus on. They can do this purely on the basis of suspicion.
Okay, I want to unpack suspicion for a moment. Because in any standard legal system, or at least the version of it we're all taught in civics class, you need evidence to arrest someone.
You need probable cause.
Probable cause. You need a warrant signed by a judge who has looked at some facts. You can't just say, I have a hunch about that guy. Let's lock him up for 3 months and see what happens.
Well, under this new framework in Balochistan, that safeguard, that judicial check, is effectively removed. And this suspicion clause is incredibly broad.
How broad are we talking?
The sources detail who is targeted. It lists the obvious ones. Terrorists, target killers, kidnappers, people involved in serious violent crime. And if it stopped there, you might say, okay, extreme measures for extreme crimes.
But I'm guessing it doesn't stop there.
It doesn't. The net just gets wider and wider. It includes anyone suspected of aiding terrorists. It includes anyone involved in activities that threaten public safety.
And those are the trapdoor terms, aren't they? Aiding and public safety.
They're completely subjective.
Right. So if I'm a journalist and I interview a separatist leader just to get their side of the story for a news report, am I aiding them?
Under these rules, you could be.
And if I'm a student protesting for better water facilities in my village and my protest blocks a road for an hour, am I a threat to public safety?
That's exactly the ambiguity that critics, the ones cited in these sources, argue is intentional. It's a feature, not a bug. When the definition of the crime is that loose, the power of the enforcer becomes absolute.
You don't need to prove the person is a terrorist.
You just need to suspect they might be helping one, however you define helping.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very low bar for taking away 3 months of someone's life.
And it's not just about sitting in a regular jail cell. The government is building specific infrastructure for this. They're calling them internment centers.
Yes. The local term used in the sources is hirasti markaz. And the government's narrative, their PR around these centers, is fascinating.
What's the spin?
The research quotes the chief minister, Mir Sarfraz Bugti. He's the political face of this policy, and he's not shying away from it. He's actually pitching it as a solution to a long-standing problem.
A solution. A solution to what?
To the problem of missing persons. His argument is that these internment centers will, and this is a direct quote from the source, bury the politics over missing persons forever.
Bury the politics. Wow. That is a very specific and very chilling choice of words.
It is. His logic, as presented in the source material, seems to be this. The public anger, the protests, the international condemnation, all the politics regarding missing persons stems from the fact that families don't know where their loved ones are. They're just missing.
So his solution is to tell them where they are?
Essentially, yes. If the state legalizes their detention and puts them in a known government-sanctioned internment center, they aren't missing anymore. They are interned, problem solved.
So he's saying we aren't disappearing them in some secret location. We're just holding them without trial in this specific building right here.
That's the argument.
That feels like a semantic trick of the highest order. Problem solved. We know where they are, but they're still denied their freedom, their liberty, their due process.
Exactly. The core grievance isn't just about location. It's about the lack of justice. But the government claims this new system brings the whole issue into a legal framework. They are even promising an oversight board to make it all seem palatable.
An oversight board. Okay, tell me about this board, because usually when you hear oversight board, you think of independent judges or human rights watchdogs. Who is on this one?
Well, according to the source, the board would be a mix. It would comprise civilians, military officers, criminologists, and even psychologists.
A psychologist. Why a psychologist?
Their stated job is to review the mental and physical state of the detainees. The government is pitching this whole thing as a rehabilitation effort. The idea they're selling is we're holding them to de-radicalize them, to fix them.
So you're not a political prisoner, you're a patient.
That's one interpretation.
But having a military officer on the board, I mean, that suggests the security apparatus is still grading its own homework, doesn't it?
It raises serious questions about independence, absolutely.
Yeah.
And your point about the psychologist is spot on. It almost pathologizes dissent. As if to say, if you disagree with the state's narrative, you must be mentally unwell, so we need to treat you.
It medicalizes the detention. It transforms the detainee from a political prisoner who has rights and a cause into a patient or a security risk that just needs to be managed and contained.
A very perceptive reading. And the critics, the ones detailed in Sarwech Odho's research, they are not buying this narrative for a second.
Let's hear from them. The research highlights Nasrullah Balagh. He's a key figure in this debate, isn't he?
He is. Nasrullah Balagh is the chairman of the Voice for Balochistan Missing Persons. He has been on the ground living this issue for years, and his argument is blunt. He says these centers are essentially giving legal cover to enforced disappearances.
So in his view, the state is essentially saying, we used to do this illegally, now we've written a new rule so we can do it legally. It's laundering the crime.
Precisely. It legitimizes all the past illegalities. Think about it. If the security forces were holding someone in a secret safe house for the last year, they can now just transfer them to one of these official internment centers and say, look, it's all above board, all under the Prevention Rules 2025.
It wipes the slate clean for the state.
For the state, yes. But the person is still locked up without a trial. And there was another legal perspective in the source material from a lawyer named Rafullah Kakar.
Right, Kakar. What was his take?
He points out the sociological danger here. He warns that this doesn't solve the grievance of the Baloch people. It deepens it. He argues that educated youth, the very people you want to bring into the system, are turning to resistance because of this kind of suppression.
It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. You treat an entire generation like potential terrorists, you deny them legal rights, you lock them up without trial, and eventually they stop believing in the state and start fighting it.
It confirms the narrative of the armed resistance groups. If the state says, we can take you for 90 days on a hunch, then the state is acting like a hostile occupying force, not a government. Kekkar's point is that you cannot arrest your way out of a political problem.
And just to ground this in legal history, because I think you, the listener, need to understand how big of a shift this is, how does this new 90-day rule compare to previous laws, even the tough ones?
It is a massive regression. The sources make a direct comparison to the Anti-Terrorism Act of 1997.
Okay, 1997.
Now, keep in mind, back in 1997, that Anti-Terrorism Act was heavily criticized. It was considered draconian at the time.
So that was already a very tough law.
Very tough. But even under that strict law, the police had to present a suspect in court within 24 hours.
24 hours versus 90 days.
That is the difference. And it's everything. That 24-hour rule is the principle of habeas corpus. Show me the body. It forces the state to bring the person out of the shadows and before a judge.
And the judge asks questions.
The judge asks, why is this person here? What is the evidence? Have they been beaten? It is the primary, most fundamental check against torture in custody.
Because if you have to show someone to a judge the next morning, you can't beat them within an inch of their life the night before. Or at least it's much, much harder to hide.
Exactly. But with a 90-day detention window, that immediate judicial check is gone. You are in a black box for 3 months. The judiciary is effectively cut out of the loop for an entire quarter of a year.
That brings us to a really crucial transition, because you might look at all this and say, well, that's Balochistan. It's a conflict zone. It has its own unique issues. Things are different there.
A common argument.
But the research provided by Sarwech Odho, specifically the reports from Radio Voice of Sindh, London, shows that this mindset, this approach, isn't staying in the provinces. It is bleeding right into the capital, into Islamabad.
That is the terrifying connection. The methods being honed in the periphery are being applied in the center. And the research highlights a case that proves no one is safe, not even a high-profile lawyer at the heart of the system. We're talking about the arrest of Imaan Mazari.
Let's look at this case in detail. I mean, Imaan Mazari isn't a militant. She isn't hiding in a cave somewhere.
No, she's the opposite. She is a prominent human rights lawyer. She's the daughter of a former human rights minister for the country. She operates in the daylight, in the courts.
She represents the very people we were just talking about, the missing, the oppressed. She is a part of the legal system trying to make it work.
She is an officer of the court.
So the source material, and this includes some very disturbing footage from Siyasat.pk, describes an incident at the Islamabad High Court. Imaan Mazari and her husband, Liaquat Chatha, who is also a lawyer, were there. Why were they at the court that day?
The irony is just crushing. They were there to proactively inquire about any cases that might have been registered against them.
So they weren't hiding.
They were doing the opposite. They had heard rumors of charges, so they went to the court to basically say, here we are, if there's a case, tell us, we want to engage with the legal process, apply for bail, and defend ourselves.
They were doing exactly what a law-abiding citizen is supposed to do. You don't run, you go to the judge. And what happened when they did that?
The sources describe a scene of absolute chaos.
Yeah.
They were arrested right there, on the court premises. But this wasn't a standard professional arrest. The description is, well, it's brutal.
The source mentions the physical disparity, a male police officer.
Yes. The report describes a large male police officer, double her size, dragging Imaan Mazari. It explicitly says he grabbed her by the neck and her clothes.
I want to stop there. A male officer grabbing a woman by the neck. In Pakistan, that's not just an assault. It's a massive cultural and legal violation.
It's a huge red line. In Pakistan, the concept of chadar or shardawari, the sanctity of the veil and the four walls, is paramount. The law is supposed to reflect this. A female officer must be present to arrest or interrogate a woman.
That's the law.
That is the law. You do not have male officers manhandling women. It is legally forbidden and deeply culturally offensive.
It's a line you just don't cross. Even in the worst of times, usually, that gender protocol is respected. But here in the Islamabad High Court, in front of everyone, it was just ignored.
And the witnesses were significant. The president of the Islamabad High Court Bar, a man named Wajid Jilani, was there. He watched it happen. The sources say he expressed absolute shame.
I can't even imagine. You're the president of the bar. You are supposed to be the guardian of the court's dignity, and you are watching your colleague, another lawyer, being dragged away by her neck on your home turf, and you can't stop it.
The source notes that the bar president said lawyers were being dragged away despite direct promises from the high court that they would be protected. It shows the utter helplessness of the judiciary in that moment.
Did the police give a reason when the other lawyers there asked, "What are you doing? On what grounds?" What was the response?
According to the sources, the police response was the classic, chilling phrase. The orders came from very high up.
Very high up. That vague, ominous phrase. It's the ultimate trump card, isn't it? It implies that the law doesn't matter, the procedure doesn't matter, because power has spoken.
And the violation didn't stop at the arrest. It continued right into the legal process. They were remanded for 14 days into judicial custody. But here is a critical legal detail that often gets overlooked. They were sent to remand without being physically presented before the judge in open court.
Explain that to me. Why does that specific detail matter so much? Why is it so important that they are physically standing in front of the judge?
It matters for everything. The remand hearing is the safety valve. It's the one moment the system builds in for accountability. The judge is supposed to see the accused.
To look at their condition.
Exactly. The judge asks, were you mistreated? Do you have any complaints? The judge looks for signs of torture. If they have a black eye, a broken arm, the judge is supposed to ask why.
So by not presenting them physically,
you blind the judge. The judge is just signing a piece of paper about a name, not seeing a human being who may have been abused. It removes the opportunity for the accused to say, I was dragged by my neck. I was denied water. It sanitizes the process for the official record, while the reality on the ground is brutal.
And we know about those conditions because of Imaan Mazari, Imaan's mother. She was live tweeting during this whole ordeal, wasn't she?
Yes, and her testimony is just heartbreaking. She initially called it a forced disappearance because for a period of time after the arrest, she didn't know where they had been taken. The police took them, and then there was just silence.
That gap in time, that period of not knowing, that's where the terror lives.
It is, and she reported that lawyers tried to bring the most basic supplies to them in custody. Water, dry fruit, even medicine for Imaan.
And what happened?
Access denied. They weren't even allowed to see their faces. The lawyers couldn't verify their physical condition. And you have to understand, denying water and medicine isn't about security. It's about cruelty. It's a tactic. It's about breaking the person's spirit.
That leads us directly to the next folder in Sarwech Odho's research, this concept of breaking. Because we aren't just seeing arrests, we are seeing a deliberate strategy designed to dismantle the human personality.
This is, I think, the darkest part of this entire deep dive. We're looking at this recurring theme of masked men, the Naqab Posh. Whether it's in Balochistan or Islamabad, the arrest is often conducted not by a uniformed officer with a badge and a name, but by men in plain clothes with their faces covered.
Why the masks? I mean, if you're the state, if you believe you have the law on your side, why would you hide your face?
Because the mask removes accountability. If Officer Smith from the 5th Precinct arrests you, you can file a complaint against Officer Smith. You can sue him. If a man in a mask driving an unmarked car takes you, who do you sue?
No one.
It blurs the line between a legal arrest and a state-sanctioned kidnapping. It creates a profound psychological terror where you don't even know who holds you or by what authority.
And the research gives us a specific harrowing example of what can happen when these forces hold you for a long time, the case of Liaquat Chatha.
This is a story that should chill every single listener. Liaquat Chatha was not an activist. He was not a protester. He was the former commissioner of Rawalpindi, a high-ranking, powerful bureaucrat, a man of the system.
And he was the whistleblower on the election rigging. Correct.
That's right. During the February 8th elections, he did something completely unprecedented. He held a press conference, and he admitted to rigging the results. He confessed on camera that he was pressured to manipulate results against one party. It was a political bombshell.
And then what happened?
And then he vanished.
Gone.
Gone. For nearly 2 years. He just fell off the map. No one knew where he was. And the source mentions that he only recently surfaced. But the man who came back is not the man who went in.
Describe what the sources say about his condition when he reappeared.
They use the word broken. The text summary says he has lost consciousness or mental stability. He is suffering from various illnesses. He isn't the confident, articulate bureaucrat who gave that press conference anymore. He's described as a shell of his former self.
The clear implication being that he was held under such duress that he broke.
The source explicitly references commentary by the journalist Imran Riaz Khan, suggesting that Chatha was held until his mind or his will simply snapped. It's a strategy of neutralization that goes beyond just silencing.
It's not just about stopping him from talking. It's about destroying his credibility by destroying his sanity. If he comes back broken and incoherent, then his original confession can be dismissed as the ramblings of an unstable man.
And it serves as a terrifying billboard for everyone else in the system. Look at what happened to the commissioner. If we can do this to him, a powerful insider, imagine what we can do to you.
And you could be anyone. The research also mentions a much lower profile case, a man named Najam. He wasn't a commissioner, he was just a political party worker.
And this illustrates the jungle law aspect of the situation. Najam was a worker for the PTI political party. His crime, if you can call it that, was chanting slogans on a Tuesday.
Why Tuesday specifically?
Tuesday is apparently the day that the former Prime Minister Imran Khan's sisters visit him in jail. So supporters sometimes gather outside to show solidarity. It's a symbolic gathering. Najam chanted slogans. That's it.
And for chanting slogans?
The report says he was arrested and tortured so severely that the police couldn't present him in court for several days.
Because he was too battered to be seen by a judge.
Exactly. They had to hide him from the judicial system because his body was the evidence of a crime committed by the state. They allegedly waited for the swelling to go down or for him to be able to stand on his own before they finally put him into the official legal process.
This is a closed loop of violence. The police torture you, then they have to hide you because they tortured you, and the court just waits until you're presentable enough to be processed. There is no off-ramp for the victim in that cycle.
And usually in a functioning society, there is one group that is supposed to scream about this from the rooftops, the media, the journalists. But our next folder of research shows that the war on information is just as brutal as the war on the streets.
You can't have a system like this operate for long if people are filming it. You need the dark.
And Sarwech Odho's research points to a very specific targeting of what we could call the messengers. It's not just the politicians being arrested or the activists. It's the people holding the cameras and writing the stories.
We have the case of a man named Mudassar. He's a producer.
And their detail is significant. Mudassar is a producer for the journalist Paris Jahanzeb. He's the guy behind the scenes. He's the infrastructure that makes the news possible. Arresting the face on TV is one thing. Arresting the technical staff, the producers, the camera operators, that's a sign that you want to shut down the entire operation.
And what law did they use to arrest him? Did they say he stole a car?
No. They used PICA, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act.
I remember when that law was being debated. The government sold it as a way to protect women and children from online harassment. They said, we need this to stop cyberbullying.
That was the Trojan horse. It was sold as a tool for protection, but it is being used as a weapon of censorship. In this new context, posting a video that is critical of the state can be framed as a cybercrime. Reporting on protests becomes electronic terrorism.
So they have successfully weaponized the digital laws against the very people who produce digital content.
And they've combined it with what the source calls a technocratic court system.
Technocratic, that's a new word for me. What does the source mean by that?
It refers to using bureaucratic technicalities as a weapon to deny justice. It's a strategy of manufactured delays. The source highlights the case of the journalist Asad Ali Tour, who is also referred to in some contexts within the source material as Asura Barakat.
Right. Asad Ali Tour is a well-known journalist, very vocal in his criticism.
And he has been detained for nearly 60 days. And the reason he isn't getting out isn't because he was convicted of a crime in a fair trial. It's because of unavailability.
Unavailability, what does that mean?
It means the judge is on leave. Or the prosecutor from the FIA, the Federal Investigation Agency, has a flat tire and can't make it to court. Or the case file is missing. Or the internet is down at the courthouse. They use these mundane, technical, bureaucratic excuses to keep a man in a cage.
It's intentional inefficiency. It's a form of filibuster against freedom, a pocket veto on justice.
The source argues that the ultimate goal is to leave the accused rotting in jail to induce a compromise. They want to break their will through boredom, frustration, and the constant fear of the unknown. They want the journalist to finally say, fine, I'll stop reporting, I'll shut down my channel, just let me go home.
It's a war of attrition. They have the clock, the prisoner doesn't. So we've built a very grim but very detailed picture here. We have the prevention rules in Balochistan legalizing 90-day detention. We have the brutal public dragging of Imaan Mazari in the capital. We have broken bureaucrats like Liaquat Chatha. And we have a silenced media being crushed by weaponized laws. If we pull back and look at the synthesis, the big picture Sarwech Odho is painting for us, what are we really looking at?
I think we're looking at a fundamental renegotiation of the relationship between the state and the citizen. The sources suggest a total collapse of the social contract.
The social contract being the basic idea. I, the citizen, obey the laws, and you, the state, protect my rights and my safety.
That's the deal. But in the scenarios described in these reports, the state has become the primary predator. The source makes a very painful but powerful comparison to the Raymond Davis case.
Oh, that is a sore spot for many. For our international listeners who might not remember, Raymond Davis was a CIA contractor who shot and killed 2 Pakistani men in broad daylight in Lahore back in 2011. It was a massive diplomatic incident.
A huge incident. And ultimately, Raymond Davis was released. There was dayat or blood money paid to the families, but the state machinery worked overtime to ensure he got a safe diplomatic exit. He was treated with a level of due process and care that prioritized his safety above all else.
Because he was an American. Because he was a foreigner with powerful backing.
And the comparison the source makes is absolutely stark. A foreign intelligence agent who killed citizens on the street got better treatment, more legal protection than the country's own lawyers, its own politicians, and its own journalists.
That double standard, it burns. It sends a message to the Pakistani citizen that says, you're second class in your own home. If you have a foreign passport, we respect the law. If you are one of us, we can drag you by the neck.
It completely destroys the legitimacy of the state in the eyes of its own people. And that brings us to the future implications. If this model succeeds, if the Balochistan prevention rules are accepted by the higher courts and the public just gets used to them, what happens next?
Balochistan is often called the laboratory of the country, right? The place where new, harder tactics are tested.
It is the testing ground. If they can normalize 90-day detention on mere suspicion there, the precedent is set. Why not expand it to Sindh next? Why not to Punjab? If the judiciary doesn't strike this down now, forcefully and unequivocally, it becomes the new normal for the entire country.
It reframes the reality for our listener, for you. This isn't just news from a distant province. This is about your own safety. You think you have rights because they are written down in a constitution. But if the person with the gun doesn't care about the book and the judge is perpetually unavailable, then those rights are just ink on paper.
That is the chilling lesson from these sources. Rights are only as strong as the institutions willing to defend them. And right now, those institutions in Pakistan, according to this research, are either complicit in the crackdown or utterly helpless to stop it.
The police just say, orders from above, and the conversation ends right there.
And that void, that vacuum where justice is supposed to be, is being filled with these internment centers and these masked men.
It is a heavy realization. But that is exactly why this kind of work, this kind of deep dive commissioned by Radio Voice of Sindh, London, is so important. Because if we don't look at it, if we don't document it and talk about it, it just happens in the dark.
We have covered a tremendous amount of detail. I think it's important we crystallize the key takeaways for the listener. There are, I think, 3 main pillars to this research that we've discussed.
Okay, let's break them down. What is pillar number 1?
Pillar 1 is the legislative shift. This is the most crucial part. We are moving from illegal actions to legal frameworks. The Balochistan Prevention Rules 2025 are the flagship of this strategy. It's the shift from illegally disappearing someone to legally interning them for 90 days on suspicion. It is the legalization of the black hole.
Right. It's making the crime into the law. What's the second pillar?
Pillar 2 is universal brutality. It is gender blind and it is status blind. The arrest of Imaan Mazari proves that being a woman, being a lawyer from an elite family, being a public figure, none of that is a shield anymore. The cultural red line of Chedar or Shardawari has been breached.
No one is safe. The old rules of engagement are gone. And the third pillar?
Pillar 3 is the strategy of silence. This is the psychological warfare element. The broken condition of Liaquat Chatha, the reported torture of Najam, the endless grinding detention of journalists like Asad Ali Tour. The goal isn't just to punish the individual, but to break the will of the entire opposition, to induce a widespread silence through targeted terror.
And usually we try to end on some kind of a positive note, but the sources here are sounding an alarm, not a lullaby. It's hard to find the upside.
The sources do offer one analytical insight that offers a glimmer of, well, maybe not hope, but of cold, hard reality. The expert analysis in the text suggests that when the state uses this much force instead of engaging in dialogue, it doesn't actually end politics, it just fuels resistance.
This goes back to what the lawyer, Rafila Kakar, was saying, that this just creates more militants, more anger.
History confirms this time and again. You cannot arrest your way out of a political grievance. You can bury the people, but you cannot bury the idea. Chief Minister Bugti said he wants to bury the politics of missing persons. But by building these internment centers, he might just be building monuments to that very grievance.
Monuments to grievance, that's a powerful phrase. Every single person you lock up for 90 days has a family, has a tribe, has a community. You are not solving one problem, you are creating 100 new sources of anger.
It's a cycle of repression and resistance. And unless the courts find their spine or civil society finds its voice and pushes back hard, that cycle just accelerates.
Well, listener, we promised you a deep dive. This was deep and it was dark, but it is necessary. We have to look at the facts as they are presented.
Knowledge is the prerequisite for any kind of change. You simply cannot fix what you do not acknowledge.
Absolutely. And I want to reiterate, because this work deserves recognition, that this detailed investigation was brought to you based on the specific, courageous research and presentation of Sarwech Odho. It takes guts to compile this kind of information when the stakes are this high.
Indeed. And you're listening to this on Radio Voice of Sindh, London. Their platform is dedicated to amplifying the voice of the oppressed, the Mazlum and Kiawaz. And today, they have put the unseen on the record for all of us to hear.
We're going to leave you with a final thought to mull over. It's a question that just kept popping up in my mind as we went through these files.
What's that?
We rely on the law to protect us from criminals. That's the basic social contract. But if the laws themselves are rewritten to detain the innocent on nothing more than suspicion, and if the courts can't even protect the lawyers who are supposed to stand up and defend us, who protects you?
That is the question.
Think about that. Until next time, stay informed.